All right. Well, I've got a new question coming in from Jonathan, who asks: Is inflation is it a result of employers increasing prices to make higher profits? And how does the Fed connect the interest rate as a way to directly control inflation?
All right, great question. Obviously, it's a question of this moment that we are all living through. So let's begin with inflation. The short answer to your question, and I'm trying to be as brief as I can, is yes, employers raising prices have a lot to do with inflation. And I smile when I say that because this is a basic lesson in economics. Employers are the people to whom we give, in a capitalist system, the power and the authority to set prices, to raise them or lower them or leave them the same. Employees, the vast majority of us, 99 plus percent of us are employees if we work in a job. We do not have the power to set prices. I've been an employee in various institutions all my life. No employer ever invited me into his or her office to work on the question, will we be raising the price of what we produce in this business? Will we be lowering it? No, no, no. That the employer keeps as the prerogative exclusively of the employers. So the only way we have an inflation, and by the way, the definition of inflation, a general rise in prices. Not every price goes up the same, but a general rise. The only people who could do that are employers. The government doesn't set prices for the goods and services that are produced in our society, and the employees don't either. So it's the employer. So the first thing you want to do if you are analyzing an inflation is realize that the real question to explain an inflation is this one. Why are employers making the decision to generally raise prices? And the answer to that obvious question is pretty obvious too. Everything employers do in order to make their businesses successful is done in order to improve the profitability. I've taught courses in business schools, for example, and the business school teaches young men and women who go to school how to make judgments about everything. Do you hire someone? Do you buy another truck? Do you expand overseas? Do you change your technology? The answer to all those questions is the same. What is the impact on profits? If the proposed action raises profits, you do it. And if the proposed action threatens or damages profits, you know not to do it. So now we've got it. You know why prices are going up? Because businesses have decided that is a profitable strategy to undertake. And in case you had any doubts, if you look at the last 18 months during which we've now had quite an inflation, you will also see that corporate profits are going off the chart up. Yeah, raising prices is a way to make more money in the last couple of years, and that's the basic reason why we've got it. Now, the second part of your question: what is the Federal Reserve doing? Well, in my judgment, I do this for a living, the Federal Reserve is doing something very strange. It has decided not only to raise interest rates as the way to bring down the inflation, and by the way, they're worried about the inflation for two reasons. Number one, the mass of people in America can't keep up. The overwhelming majority of us are not seeing our income rise currently at the rate of 8 or 9% a year, which it would have to for us to be able to afford the same goods we bought last year that now cost 8 or 9% more. So most Americans are not in that position. Therefore, most Americans are being hurt by the inflation. The second reason, probably more important, as prices go up in the United States, the whole rest of the world starts looking for other substitutes for buying goods from America, places that they can go to where the prices haven't risen 8 or 9%. And by the way, don't be fooled by politicians wanting to get you to think in a peculiar way by telling you something which is a lie, namely that, oh, inflation, that's not a problem of the United States alone, that's everywhere. Not true. I'll give you two examples. I'll give you the example of Japan and China. Both of them have inflations in the neighborhood of 1 or 2% a year, not 8 or 9. And those are huge, important countries. So we have a particular problem. As the prices go up, foreigners go elsewhere to buy goods and services. They don't buy American goods because they're all 8 or 9% higher each year. They go elsewhere. And if we can't sell our goods abroad, our exports, we lay off people here, which is beginning to happen because then no one's going to hire them here to produce what you can't sell abroad because your inflation is jacking up the prices. So for all those reasons, the Federal Reserve comes in. We got to do something about the inflation. I won't mention that Mr. Biden and the Democrats are worried about the election a few weeks from now because they see that the inflation may drive people to the other political party. Raising interest rates has a simple logic. It makes it more expensive to buy a home. It makes it more expensive to buy a car and pay on time. It makes it more expensive to use your credit card, and it makes it more expensive for students to borrow to go to school. In all those cases, people will do less spending on anything because it's too expensive to borrow the money they need to make those expenditures. So the idea is if you make it harder for people to buy goods and services, you make it less likely for the employer class to raise prices because they see they're already losing business. If they raise prices, they risk losing more. So it's the idea you kind of stifle the demand for goods and services as a way to persuade the employer maybe not to raise prices. Why am I critical? And why I think you ought to be as well? Because this is not the only way to deal with an inflation. In fact, it's not a very good way. It often doesn't work, and it is awfully soft on the employer when it's the employer's decision to raise the prices which give us the inflation problem in the first place. So what else could the Federal Reserve do? I'm going to give you one of many examples. In 1971, a Republican conservative president, Richard Nixon, facing an inflation worse than the one that we have now, went on radio and television, 15th of August, 1971, and he said the following. I'm paraphrasing. We have a terrible inflation. We have to bring it to a stop. I don't want to take a long time to do it. So here's what we're going to do. As of tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, any business in America, any office, any store, any factory that raises the price of anything, we will come, we will arrest you, and you will go to jail. And any union that raises the wages or tries to, we will do the same. This came to be called a wage price freeze. It was originally put in place for 90 days. It was extended. And you know why? It stopped the inflation on a dime. It was a very effective program done by a conservative Republican. And I will leave it to you to try to explain to yourself, your mother, your father, and your brother why a Democratic president not only won't do that, but that he and Mr. Powell at the head of the Federal Reserve will not even discuss it, will not have a debate in our country. Look at the pros and cons of a wage price freeze versus the pros and cons of raising interest rates. And here's the last point. Raising interest rates hurts, of course, the same people the inflation does. The poorest amongst us, the middle and lower income people are the ones having the hardest time as prices go up. They're the ones who are going to have the hardest time paying the rising interest rates. What kind of an economic system wants the majority to support it when the majority are the ones hurt by the inflation the employers impose, and then hurt by the government policy that's supposed to deal with the inflation that the employers impose? It's a system which, pardon me for repeating it to you, we can do better than that, and we should have begun doing that long ago.